Down in the comments, people are constantly asking me, what are my 10 favorite sequels of all time? Well, as I was putting this video together, I couldn't narrow it down to just 10, so here is my 20 favorite sequels of all time. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place to consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your favorite movie sequels of all time. We're going to disagree. We're going to have different lists, of course, because it's our favorites and we've all had different experiences. As we go into this, one key thing, this is a favorites list, not a best list. So you might argue, this one is better than this one. You're right. I'm not going to disagree with you. This is my favorites list, and I would love to see yours. Second thing, I only included one movie from each franchise, so it wasn't like dominated by Star Wars or Marvel or whatever other franchise that has a bunch of really good sequels inside of it. With that said, let's get started. Kicking things off at number 20 is Spider-Man 2. A lot of people think this is the best Spider-Man movie that has ever been made, and even better than Sam Raimi's original film. It takes all the themes established in the first film and builds upon them here as Peter Parker tries to balance work, love life, and, being a superhero. Add to that, it's got some of the best action sequences in any superhero movie of all time, especially that rail sequence inside of the film. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. Got a couple issues with some of the one subplot in the middle of the film, but besides that, a great way to continue what they established in the first film. Coming in at number 19 is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the third film in this franchise. Some people would argue is the best film inside of the franchise, is they found a way to explore this whole family vacation idea in a totally different way by looking at Christmas and all of the odd idiosyncrasies that go along with it, with family coming over, vacation, cutting down a Christmas tree, and all sorts of insane hijinks kind of ensue. This is Chevy Chase in his prime, at his funniest. All throughout the entire film, it's just memorable, iconic scene after memorable, iconic scene. It's one of those movies that a lot of people, myself included, rewatch every single December. It's a Christmas classic, and it's a great way to tell a new story inside of this franchise. Number 18 is Jurassic World. To me, this is a movie that I consider to be a Taco Bell movie. It's cinematic fast food. It's certainly not the greatest film out there, but it's very easy for me to digest because it has a couple of great things about it. First off, dinosaurs on the loose in a theme park eating people. Second, Chris Pratt riding on a motorcycle with velociraptors. Is it ridiculous, the whole idea of genetically engineered dinosaurs to try and get more people to go to an amusement park because dinosaurs weren't interesting enough? Of course that's ridiculous. Is the idea of Chris Pratt training velociraptors ridiculous, especially for the idea of them having a military use? Of course it is. But it's a fun type of ridiculous, all building up to this fantastic showdown with our classic T-Rex teaming up with velociraptors to battle the Endosaurus or whatever it's called. All of it stuff that just puts a big grin on my face whether I'm watching it or talking about it right now. Next up is Fast 5, and for me this is absolutely another Taco Bell film where you just take the Fast and the Furious franchise. This is where they figured out what they were actually good at, kind of had a little bit of self-awareness to go full bonkers and not take themselves too seriously. This is peak Fast and Furious. They bring The Rock into the mix. They turn it into a heist movie that has a little bit of an Ocean's 11 vibe to it, except with fast cars, insane stunts inside of it, and a finale where they're literally using two sports cars to drag a safe through Rio. It is dumb and it is amazing. Number 16 is Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior. This is my personal favorite of the Mad Max films. The first film established the origin story for Max himself. This movie is him in full anti-hero fashion in this post-apocalyptic world. This is also back when all of the stunts had to be practical. Everything you're seeing, they really did it with real stunt work. That's kind of the way I like my stunt work to be done. Inside of it, you've also got Mel Gibson in one of his iconic roles, a great anti-hero. He's perfect in these types of films. And so I think that this is just a great sequel that once again expands on where the first film left off, tells a very straightforward, simplistic story, but is just edge of your seat excitement from beginning to end. Coming in at number 15 is Superman 2, an excellent follow-up to the original Superman film because they were written together and they were kind of shot at the same time. There's a whole interesting backstory on all of that, but they were designed to be companions to one another, where the original tells the origin story, establishes Lex Luthor, and then the second one, you get Kryptonians showing up and you get kind of the all-out fight battle inside of it, and kind of this inner struggle for Superman, for him having to realize the cost of being Superman. I think it's a great follow-up to the original film. Of course, the music is fantastic. I think the actors all here do a fantastic job with the film. Next up is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is a movie that can both have you crying in the first 10 seconds of the movie, offer Shakespearean tragedy, and have apes on horseback with machine guns battling tanks. It's a movie that somehow manages to take the absolute absurd, play it with a totally straight face, and nail the tone. This is a special kind of blockbuster to me because inside of it, while you do have Koba as a true villain, the main conflict inside of it is differing value sets where you understand where the humans are coming from. Gary Oldman is not just this mustache twirling villain. He's someone desperately trying to keep humans alive. And you have Caesar desperately trying to help apes kind of grow as a civilization. They don't want war, but because of these dueling value sets and Koba messing everything up, you end up with the conflict inside of this film. I think it absolutely works. The action is great. The drama works. It's a very emotional film that also has blockbuster satisfaction. Coming in at number 13 is Lethal Weapon 2. This just might be the most fun buddy cop film ever made. You've got two fantastic leads that have amazing chemistry with one another in Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. And whereas the first film was a little bit more serious with the material because of where the Riggs character was at, this movie, Riggs has developed, they have the friendship established, and this one just kind of goes all out with the fun, the action, the comedy, and it just works. It's, once again, a great follow-up to the original one, where the original one establishes the characters. Here we just get to play around with them a whole lot, and I think it just totally works. Number 12 is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Mission Impossible movies are all fantastic, so I just kind of averaged 4, 5, and 6, and you end up with 5. That's Rogue Nation. All of these movies do just a great job of telling a new spy story, introducing new characters that fit inside the franchise really well, finding new ways to top the stunt work inside of what you're having Tom Cruise do inside these movies, as well as building out the mythology. So it's tough for me to pick which one of these is my favorite of 4, 5, and 6 because each of them have so many great moments, great sequences, and they go together so well. But because I had to pick one, I went with Rogue Nation. As you kick it off with this great plane stunt, you have the motorcycle chase. This is where you really start getting the mythology of these films being expanded. Rebecca Ferguson is a great addition inside of it, and it set up Fallout really well. So I went with this one, but any of these three, I think, one of them had to be included. Rogue Nation is just the one that I picked. Then we have Toy Story 4. I've said it many times before. I didn't want them to make this movie because I felt that Toy Story 3 ended that trilogy so well. And what this movie did immediately inside of its story is help me to understand how Toy Story 3 closed out the Andy trilogy so well. But there was still another story to tell about Woody himself in moving on. This probably, for me, is the funniest film inside the franchise. The themes that it touches on, given my stage of life, speaks a lot to me and helped me kind of process through some things. So while I was not looking forward to this film at all, it absolutely won me over. It still had the feels and it made me laugh. It is a wonderful addition to this franchise. Bringing us into our top 10 is Logan. This is a film that works because it is kind of its own standalone pocket film, but at the same time, it's the follow-up and sequel to almost 20 years of stories with the Logan character as well as Charles Xavier. And because we have all this backstory on their relationship, on who they are and what they've been through, when you get into this film as it deals with themes about death and loss and regret, it's so potent and powerful, and it carries so much weight that it just makes for a fantastic conclusion to their story arcs. You still get the action that we've wanted, and we get a version of the action that we'd been waiting for because this movie was finally rated R and they went for it, but it also closes out their stories in a way that feels right and satisfying. Number 9 is Casino Royale. This is my personal favorite of the James Bond films, and what it does so well is reestablishes the tone and the character of James Bond by telling this story that is a continuation of the franchise while at the same time doing a bit of a restart of it. We get to see him becoming the character that we know, has a more grounded take after the Pierce Brosnan years went a little bit bonkers with some of the stuff they went with it. And because of that, you get some of the best action sequences. I mean, my favorite action sequence in the whole franchise is that parkour intro chase sequence, but the other ones at the airport, the final one with the building sinking, all of them are very cool sequences. And it's a movie that's able to make a card game inside of a spy movie thrilling and exciting with the way everything is set up. Of course, Mads Mikkelsen is fantastic, and Daniel Craig is my personal favorite Bond, so it cracks my top 10. Next up is Rocky IV. There had to be a Rocky movie on this list. There's so many good Rocky sequels, but as for this list, the one that I rewatched the most, without question, out of all the Rocky movies, even throwing the first one into the mix, is Rocky IV. It's such a nice, consumable 80s product where Rocky becomes this hero ending the Cold War. It's sort of a revenge film. It's the movie that's jam-packed with montages. And as someone that likes to go to the gym, nothing gets me more amped up than showing Rocky and Drago's competing workout routines in the second half of this film, all building up to their epic showdown. This is such a fun movie that's totally ridiculous at the same time. So for me, one of my favorite franchises of all time, my favorite movie character of all time, this is the one that I rewatched the most. Next up is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. This movie is actually more a sequel to an episode of the TV show than it is to its predecessor, as it doesn't really continue any plot lines from the previous movie, but it does continue plot lines from the episode Space Seed. And what it does so well is it really does explore where our characters would be at 15 years later as they're starting to grow old and realize that they're growing old, and they're looking back on the adventures that we saw and having some regrets about their life. And so because of that, they bring in this character from a previous episode to have the personification of our past demons coming to haunt us. And because of it, you just get a great follow-up to these characters is really what it is. It's a follow-up to the TV show. Add to that, I think James Horner's score for this film is one of the forgotten masterpieces. I just think it is absolutely fantastic. I love the model work for the ships and their final space battle. And of course, Khan is the classic Star Trek villain. This is a movie that I absolutely love. Number 6, Avengers Infinity War. If you're a fan of my channel, you are probably waiting to discover where I would place this one on this list or which MCU film I would include on this list. What makes Infinity War so interesting is that it's only kind of a sequel to Avengers Age of Ultron. It's more a follow-up to Thor Ragnarok, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, as well as Captain America's Civil War. But it's a sequel and follow-up to so many different films, brings so many franchises together, and manages to pull it all off. The tone feels about right. It has the laughs. It, of course, has big, gigantic, fantastic action inside of it. It takes the Thanos character, who'd been this kind of background guy that we'd seen little glimpses up to this point in time, brings him front and center, spends a lot of time with him because we've already established all our heroes. He's the one that gets a bunch of character development inside of the film, of course, leading up to this big slam bang finale where it's a little bit, I don't want to spoil it for you in case you're one of the 3 people on planet Earth that hasn't seen the film, but it packs a little bit of an emotional punch. Some people felt it was a bit of a cheat ending because it didn't complete the story. I was totally okay with what they did with this film and felt it was a complete story that was established in the film about who was going to win the Infinity War and get all the stones. That question was answered in the film, so I felt it was complete. So for me, this is without question one of my favorite sequels of all time. Kicking off our top 5 is The Dark Knight. I love Batman and I love origin stories, so Batman Begins was right up my alley. And what this movie does so well is it takes that little moment at the end of Batman Begins about this concept of escalation and then crafts this far more complex narrative for this sequel. Throw it into the mix. Heath Ledger's Joker, that's of course one of the iconic villains inside of the genre, or really classic villains of all time. But the forgotten one here is, I think Aaron Eckhart is equally great inside of this film with what he was able to do with the Harvey Dent character in his little moments as Two-Face. Inside of it, you have a complex moral dilemma of what Batman is having to do, what Bruce Wayne is having to do inside of this story, all of it building to a finale that's not even as much about the theatric as it is about the lesson that is trying to be taught by the Joker to Batman, and the lesson that Batman teaches and the city of Gotham teaches the Joker instead. All of it is taking a genre that's normally just about big explosions and CGI armies and taking it a lot more seriously and doing something very potent and powerful with it. This isn't just a great story in its own right, it's an important movie that showed what you could do with the genre. Next up is The Empire Strikes Back. This is the movie that has kind of set the template for what so many franchises have tried to do with their sequels ever since its release, and that is to escalate the stakes for our heroes, break up the team, and put them through more than they've ever had to face before, and this is the movie that pulled it off. Likewise, this is the movie that pulled off the cliffhanger ending where our heroes lost, that set the example that Infinity War was able to follow. For me, one of the things that's so potent about this film is that it's a coming-of-age story. I love origin stories, as I've previously said, and this is sort of Luke Skywalker's actual origin story. In the first film, he's swept off on an adventure, and we tease his ability just a little bit. He becomes the hero, but this is the one where you get that origin story of him going from guy with potential to the actual Jedi that can save the universe, all of it leading to the big duel with Darth Vader that has the great choreography and the iconic action moments inside of it, but the actual tension between the two people, the reveal of the father inside the story, that's what makes it so potent and such a fantastic film inside of that original trilogy. The thing holding this one back from being in my top 3 is I don't think it stands alone as well as a film. It makes for a fantastic piece inside of a trilogy, but as a standalone film, I think the 3 above this are more kind of standalone watches for me. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your picks down below in the comment section. We're going to have different lists. I definitely left out some of your favorites. I'm not trying to knock them, I'm not trying to diss them or anything like that. They're just not my personal favorite films, and it's awesome that they're yours. Also remember, once this video is done, check out this playlist up above. It's got all of my other lists like this, my favorite films, my favorite superhero films, my favorite trilogies. If you enjoyed this video, there's definitely something up there that you will love. In third place is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. For me, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best adventure film ever made. And if it didn't exist, this would be the best adventure film ever made. And if this movie didn't exist, Temple of Doom would probably be the best adventure film ever made. But I know a ton of people, my wife included, that think that this one is even better than the original film. Pretty sure it's the funniest film in the entire franchise. You get more iconic sequences, whether you're talking about the intro on the train chase, whether you're talking about the horse versus tank battle at the end of it, the boat chase. There's so many great sequences inside of this film. But the thing that really escalates this film is bringing in Sean Connery, James Bond, as Indiana Jones's father. They just are great on screen together. He holds his own, that you can believe that this guy is the one person that Indiana Jones would like kind of be off his guard around or wouldn't know how to respond to, that could put him in his place, slap him, and get away with it. And it just brings this other level to the franchise. Of course, it still has all the action and adventure that you want, but it also has a much more personal feel to it because the father is there. And that's what you want to do with the sequel, is find a way to do all the things that you loved about the original, but do it in a new and a different way and add a new layer of depth, and that's exactly what this movie does. Our runner-up is Aliens. There's 2 types of people in the world. Those that think that Alien is the best film in this franchise, and those that think that Aliens is the best film in this franchise. Without question, I believe that Aliens is the best film in this franchise because it takes the tension of the first film and cranks it up to that next level. There's more aliens, there's more guns, there's more explosions, but they also once again added in a family dynamic into it where you have Ripley, who becomes the surrogate mother to Newt, and you've seen Ripley as both the action hero that has to take charge even though she doesn't want to, as well as this very maternal character that wants to take care of this little girl, that I think is more potent for me than just Ripley trying to survive. Just having a character trying to not die is not compelling as themselves, stepping into danger to try and save someone else. James Cameron is just the master of creating these movies that once they get going, it just keeps winding up the tension and it keeps winding and winding and winding until you have this big final slam bang showdown. That's what this movie does so well. This is another one where James Horner has a fantastic score that just fills everything out. And the reason that this one comes ahead of kind of Last Crusade and some of these other films is because it's a sequel that I think is better than the original and is far more rewatchable and satisfying for me. But coming in first place is Speed 2 Cruise Control. Speaking of sequels better than the original, I think we can all agree that Speed 2 Cruise Control speeds past the original Speed on almost every single level. Okay, once again, just kidding. This is a terrible sequel. But actually coming in first place is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. This isn't just one of the best sequels of all time. It's one of the best action movies of all time. It's one of the best sci-fi films of all time. It's also just one of the best movies of all time because James Cameron took what worked about the original film and shifted the genre a little bit. Where the original one was a sci-fi, time travel, slasher film, action film, this one is an action sci-fi blockbuster and it takes everything to bigger levels. The original was also kind of more of a romance inside of it. This one is exploring what does it mean to be human and the dynamics we have with one another, and it does it in a way where by the end of the film, this robot feels more human than some of the human characters inside of the film. Of course, you have some of the best action ever put on screen that perfectly blends practical stunt work, practical effects with some of the early uses of CGI. You've got Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, a great set of characters, a great new villain in the T-1000. Put all the pieces together and you have a movie that adds new emotions on top of what was there before. It expands the mythology and it builds to an incredibly satisfying conclusion. And it's still a movie to this day that can get me to shed a few man tears in the final sequence of this film. So Terminator 2 Judgment Day comes in at number 1. Remember, if you want more content like this one, to check out that playlist right over there. If you enjoyed this video, there's definitely something else in there that you will enjoy. Thank you so much for watching and keep talking movies too much.